Good evening.
Good evening, Ali.
How are you?
I'm doing very good. Very happy to be in Kuwait.
Yeah, how is Kuwait so far?
Listen, we arrived yesterday, but what we have seen was amazing. We've been also taken care very nicely about the company of the Behbehani watch world, and especially also to Mohammed. And whatever in the short term we could visit in Kuwait was very nice, yes.
That's good. This is your first time in Kuwait?
First time in Kuwait, yes.
Nice. Where did you go to so far?
So we've been arriving in the evening.
Yeah.
Then we had a delicious dinner yesterday evening. And then this morning we got up early and we worked.
Mhm.
So we have taken care or give our best possible support to the team and the sales staff, internal meetings, but also very nice staff trainings to give, at the end, to color Kuwait into orange.
That's good. That's very good to hear. And Kuwait, we're very famous for our food. So you have to make sure you have to eat 24 hours. So within the 48 hours you have in Kuwait. Yeah. So try to get as much as you can in. So before we speak about Doxa watches and the reason why you're here in Kuwait, let's speak about your background. So where do you come from? Which brand did you work with? What did you before you took charge of Doxa?
Oh, that's... Now in those questions, I see I'm getting old. It's a long time, decades ago. So at the end, I'm a victim of our beloved industry. So I started very early when I was 18 years old. Home-based, grew up in Bienne, the cradle of the Swiss watch industry, in my point of view. And it was all the time a dream in Bienne. It's not a city compared to Kuwait City and all this. It's a small city. And when you finish school, the watch industry represented all the time the world to be able to go into the big world outside. You learned languages in school, you learned English. Okay, we are lucky enough in Bienne to learn French and German at the same time. The city is bilingual. And when you grew up in Bienne, you see the logos of Omega, of Rolex and all this. So it is in front of your nose, we call. So it was an industry. On top of it, in my family, a lot of close friends are also working in the watch industry. So it was obvious at least to give it a try. And it started when 18 years old to start with Omega. It was like a study. We call it BMS. So it's a special commercial degrees you got. And I was so happy. And then I thought, I made it with Omega. And of course, a young kid, a boy, 18 years old. Now I start to travel. Nothing of all these happened, obviously. And what I told, they put me the first 3 months into the Omega Museum at the time. And I cleaned watches for 3 months.
That's a good start. Yeah.
It was amazing. It's the context was also to learn the materials, to show respect to a watch, to learn about materials. And was amazing. Then my bonus was, I said, okay, guys, 3 months, what comes next? And they told me, listen, if you're ready to tell the story about Omega, which still by today I know by heart, then I was allowed to make a first tour in the Omega Museum. And I still remember it was a Japanese delegation. And then when I was young, to make a first tour. So
the first tour you did it to a Japanese
delegation, I remember, yes. And nice. So it started with Omega, then it went further to Swatch, so within the Swatch group. Afterwards, I was considered also by the family not to stay in a big group. It was also to go to a small company, to learn the value of 1 penny. So that was then Milos at the times. This was in 96, 97. And then after Milos, I got an amazing offer at the time to join Versace.
Okay.
So then I stepped from the watchmaking industry to the inside. I went into that fashion world. And then the moment then with Versace, then at the time there was a big Chinese group at the time in the year 2000 who purchased then Milos at the time. So then asked me to come back because they purchased it. There was an end of war and in the regard, and I did that then for 10, 11 years. it was not only about Milos as a brand itself, it was also the group at the time became a large group in the watch industry. You had LVMH, you had Richemont, you had the Swatch Group, and you had Peacemark. And the target was also in the beginning of 2000, China was opening up. And the same time as giving an example that the Chinese can substantiate the Swiss brand, such as it was really the target to bring high-end Swiss brand into China. And within the group, then in the next coming 8 years, we opened up 300 point of sales, monobrand boutiques in China. At the end, as a group, we opened up the Rolex first flagship store in Hong Kong. So it became pretty much big. It was very interesting to be involved on both sides. So every 4 weeks, I was down in Hong Kong and China. And so this was done until 2010, 2011, so still in the watch industry. Then afterwards, there was a shift with the group, and I came back home then to Switzerland. Then my dream was all the time, I need to once be able to live abroad, and not just in Bienne. Then I decided to open up my business for 6 years in the United States, still watch related. I opened up my own office in New York, where I facilitated brands to come into the US market, or watch affiliated industries like displays maker, one of the biggest strap suppliers. So we opened up their subsidiaries in the US, in New York. I had about 7 employees, and when in New York, they were just Swiss German speaking. And it was for brands or companies before entering into the US and spending a lot of money. I said, come first with me, smell the market before you go into big expenses. And it was very much appreciated. The business at itself, very solid. I didn't regret, but then I remember nothing against New York. I may burn my fingers now, but at the beginning I loved New York. And after 6 years...
You get tired.
You get very tired. It's a city where you pass by. I think it's also a question of age. And now I got back to Bienne, and now I enjoy the noise of silence.
Good. That's good. That's a very good history in watches. And so from very early on, you're really into watches, because we sit with a lot of people that nowadays we feel they come from like a more successful or much bigger industries, and then they take care of smaller, let's say, companies and watches. So I will tell you a very quick story of me with Doxa.
Yes.
In 2018, I think, or 19, I forgot, but I was in the Omega Museum.
Yes.
Before you guys had any retailers in Switzerland.
Yes.
You would send an email and book an appointment or something.
Yes.
I still remember that. So I emailed you guys, I got a reply, and then I just couldn't make it fit in my schedule. So my history with Doxa, even before, so when I had the chance to go to the Switzerland, I was going to Switzerland by that time because I was doing a road trip. I always wanted to see a Doxa watch. Very nice. We're very happy to see it here in our market and with Behbehani to get to experience these watches. Because in our region, Doxa was, for me, I like the history. So I know Doxa for a long time, from back in the diving history and such. But I really wanted to experience the watches. So let's talk about your visit here with Behbehani in Kuwait. So you took charge of Doxa, and now you're expanding in our market, right?
Yes.
So why did you decide to come to our market in the beginning?
So it's decided as part of a really mid long-term plan. It's nothing with Doxa is by coincidence, and it's not that we are just waiting who wants to open up Doxa. So first of all, with Doxa, we have given it a push 2.5 years ago. This has to do with the past, especially with the divers watches. What is unique with Doxa, later we go into the products, for me it was you can say a sleeping beauty. A sleeping beauty, Doxa was known, and the uniqueness in the brand, Doxa started to be active in the online business in the year 2001. And what we are doing here, also in regard to your question, we do something anti-cycle to the watch industry. We walk the same bridge, but a lot of brands being active in the offline market, in the retail market, they are trying to go into the online market. And we do the opposite way around. We walk the same bridge, but in the opposite way. We come from the online, and on a very exclusive basis, we are going now in the offline market because it's needed. It was needed also before Doxa had really especially in the Anglo-Saxophonic markets, a big fan base. It's going back to the end of the 60s, but this generation is getting older. And Doxa took a risk to become a museum brand, where at the end of the day, the end consumer is clapping on the shoulders, or collectors is as visiting a museum, but no one is thinking to buy a new Doxa anymore. So the challenge was to bring it to the market, to retailers with esteemed partners, such as now to bring a new next generation into Doxa, or in the opposite way, to bring Doxa on the wrist of an end consumer. For this now, we needed the offline market, retailers. So we do that. First, we started 2.5 years ago to focus on the Anglo-Saxophonic market, the UK and the US, historically, where Doxa is the most known, especially in regard of the activities of Jean-Jacques Cousteau in the 60s with aqualung, US divers. So there's a strong linkage going back over 50 years. And so now in our strategy, first we combined those markets. We opened up a subsidiary in Europe. Then we went into Europe. And now we're building bridges. Then we had the UK, where Doxa today is much more visible than 2.5 years ago. And so now these people start to travel. And so where do the people travel from the UK? They also travel to the Middle East. And the situation of the Middle East with Doxa, what is wonderful, Doxa is not a new brand. Doxa is coming back.
True.
And Doxa was here in the 50s.
Doxa here in the 50s, and actually I had an interview with the retailer previously, Al-Shab.
Yes.
So yeah.
And you had end of 40s, was West End.
Yeah.
Still here.
Oh yeah.
You had Ernst Borrell.
We had everything. So actually we interviewed Abdullah Al-Shab, who was the son of Al-Shab, Khdayer Al-Shab. Khdayer Al-Shab was the retailer for most Swiss brands. Yeah. So he had Longines, Vacheron, Doxa, so many different. He still sent me actually a knife from Doxa that it's written in Arabic and such. I will ask him to send it. So
that would be amazing. We also got gifted in another market, because now we tour around. And I was just gifted by another partner in another market with 2 watches of their private collection, still with the original price tag. So and you feel it. The Doxa is in the ears of the older generation. Now our duty, together also with Mohamed and the company Behbehani, is now to let this wonderful story with absolute reliable products come back. And it's a challenge, but we will succeed. From this we are convinced. It is just when you go back also today, when you talk with the younger generation, and you mentioned Jean-Jacques Cousteau. I asked this question also to my son, and he may say, oh, Daddy, of course, is this a new player from Paris Saint-Germain or from Manchester City? So this is now to bring this rich tradition to the next generation. And in the last 2.5 years, what has been done was really based on a big success with it. And over 50% of our yearly sales now are to first-time buyer with Doxa. That's a very high rate. So now strategically, your initial question, first we had the market, then Europe, and it was obvious, and now the next will be the Middle East. We could also sell to Asia. We don't want this year. But instead, going to the Middle East, it was not that we pick one market and then we celebrate, oh, Doxa is now in the Middle East. No, we have taken the same date, and we started such as the same date in Kuwait, in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia.
So in the past 2.5 years, I noticed that Doxa have been reintroducing, cleaning up the catalog, let's say. So can we talk about the current models and how many models you have?
Yes, so the first, on your comment, cleaning up the catalog, it's not cleaning, it's focusing on the diverse collection. Okay. So we had some market earlier days, back 60s, 70s, with dressed classical watches. That does not exist anymore. So, and the focus is very clear, sub-collection, diverse watches. Doxa stays in the water. We're not trying to please pilots. We're not trying to please car fanatics. We stay in the water. So what we do now in regard of the product, put my microphone like this because I need to touch some products. It starts, it's going back.
You can put it next to you, it's okay. So if it's easier for you.
So For us, in regard of products, it's a mix between the past, the present, and the future. That's the baby after the research, the 64, you know, where Doxa went into the lakes of Neuchâtel.
Yeah.
And when they made the research, it was a very conservative market. By the end of the 60s or in the 60s, the ocean was such as a mystery as the space.
Yeah.
And a small team of engineers, they started to be interested what is happening also down in the ocean. So, and when you look at the models at the time, they were either dark blue, the divers' watches, or black. And they went into the lake of Neuchâtel. In the 60s, so that's our first baby, but it's linked also to researches, which was done with divers' watches. And funny enough that the last 2 years, colors came into the watch industry, like fast-running horses. Not only in regard of the color of orange, also so-called, also we have our aquamarine since decades, but the aquamarine, or like the called Tiffany blue. But the revolutionary aspect here was that they tested the colors in the lake of Neuchâtel, and it came out that orange was the most suitable, most readable dial on the water, until 30, almost 40 meters. So it turned out with the sub 300 that the orange dial got launched in 1967. So that's the most crucial part. And still today, the orange is the #1 selling color.
It became like an iconic color for you. Like when
Yes, it's guiding, it's following us, it's inhaled, and we're very happy that the brand can be oriented and being typed with one color. But the functionality then in 67 to come out with an orange dial, that was revolutionary. The market wasn't ready. But despite that fact, 1 year later, the researchers went even beyond this, and then the famous 300T with helium valve got launched in Basel. And this was the first watch with a helium valve being sold to end consumer. There was another brand who sold it to diving organizations with a helium valve, but Doxa was the first one to end consumers. So-called 300T, still one of the best sellers globally, and an icon piece for Doxa. In general, Doxa then got into other colors, with a result today of 7 main colors, and every color has a name. I can repeat, we have the orange for professional, the yellow for diving star, the black for shark hunter, aquamarine for the turquoise, white pearl. We could name it, all of them. And still today the collection of Doxa is very easy to understand. Now, pricing wise, Doxa since the end of the 60s was all the time known in offering a lot of watch for a very reasonable retail price.
Sure.
And still today the same feedback. And I may say it's true. We offer a lot of watch, a lot of value, a lot of trust, and it's a product which needed to fulfill all the time the functionality. In the 60s, a diver the watch was his potential lifesaver. Today, the divers, they have their computers. They still wear a diver's watch.
True.
Because if the computer falls out, you still have a second reserve option. So, but from that moment on, since 2.5 years, we went now in building up a collection who fulfills the need for today and tomorrow. So what we did first in the year 2019, we had the so-called the sub 200, which is retailing now in 320. 310 with a sapphire glass box. Also a sapphire bezel.
That's a very good price for a Swiss watch.
Oh, it's very good. Yeah. And also with a FKM rubber strap. Also to mention, all of our rubber straps are integrated. I don't like the straight cut, the gap to see through. It's also a fill through of the colors, of the 7 colors, looks amazing. And so this watch here may be told is a piece of replica which was already in the collection in the 70s. We just managed to bring it back now also with a sapphire glass box. But this is also a first price range where you can find new, younger generations. Don't start to take them $5,000 out of the pocket for their first watch. So it starts there.
Yeah.
So the Subs 200, we're very happy. Can also be seen the watch for the office. And still today, when not everyone who is buying a Doxa is diving.
Oh, definitely.
And so you may call it also a nice desk diver watch.
Exactly. I was about to say that. Yes, yes.
So in this regard, now we move on. Then in 2020, we launched the chronograph. The chronograph in the same aspects, there's a market for. And also a chronograph with the functionality. Today you have another market. You have the long-time divers and the cave divers. And they're not just diving for 20 minutes. I think the record is 30 hours in cave diving. 30 hours. So, and that's why also with a chronograph function, there they use a chronograph function to measure the total time when they're on the road, they survive in caves and go further. So, but also functional watch, the same concept of a sapphire glass box, 45 millimeters, but a very nice tool watch also.
And throughout the collection, you made sure, I think all of them are at least 200 meters water resistant, right?
Absolutely. So with Doxa, it's also with one exception, very simple. So the sub 200 is 200 meters.
Yeah.
The sub 300, the one of 67, 300 meters. Then we have the sub 1000, sub 600. It's another product which we launched last year, 600 meters. Then we have the sub 1500T, 1500 meter. But the only exception is the 300T, no rule without exception. 300T really originally based by history, but the 300T is water resistant to 1200 meter. So that's the only one.
The only exception. But
the only exception.
No, I noticed that. So I was like studying for the interview. I was like, okay, there's 200. So it makes sense.
You.
And then the introduction of what really was really interesting to me was the introduction for the carbon.
Yes.
So as you said, I know carbon is not ideally, I think, for diving because maybe it can crack or something. Or
no, the forged carbon, the combination, we have titanium cases.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a titanium case. If we would have done the full carbon also in regard of water resistance, it becomes more delicate.
Oh, I see. That's very interesting.
So it's a titanium case on the back side here. And here with the forged carbon, it goes also to show tribute of the past. That was the first one, of the today and the future. And we deeply hope that the people being in charge of Doxa in 50 years, we need to leave them also some food, that what we did in the year 2022, that also we adapted it to today's need or today's demand.
I see.
Also here with a cask movement, but it's an absolute unique piece. The case by its own weight is only 44 grams, so it's very light, and including the follow clasp, the entire watch is weighing 87 grams.
Amazing.
So now the combination also again of the 7 colors. Here the uniqueness is also here you have the dial is full superluminova, so it lightens up the entire dial.
And now let's talk, I think, about the latest addition to your collection, which is the Army.
Yes, so now we had the huge honor in this April to launch a limited edition of the Army together with Watches of Switzerland in the US, 100 pieces in ceramic. This piece got sold down in not more than 24 hours, 100 pieces gone. But then, of course, you frustrate the market. So, of course, it was the plan to come up with a certain pause or a 6 months delay. Also delay, let's say a gap, exactly, it's the right word. And that we filled in then an unlimited edition now in stainless steel, either with bronze version or full stainless steel. But the story here is unique, that in '68, Doxa was the official supplier for the Swiss Army divers. 68. But the people in '68 being in the Swiss Army, they didn't know that the Swiss Army diver existed. was a secret division. And just last November, the Ministry of Defense disclosed it, that they existed, and we still have 12 living legends who were mayors and all this, and now they can talk. For 50 years, they were not allowed to tell what they did. So that's why we've been waiting all the time. Hopefully, please, Switzerland, give us the right to be able to really tell the full story. We could have gone out in the past, okay, here's the orange dial, this was distributed 150 pieces. But now the story is much more valid behind, because you can tell what really happened. And the Swiss Army divers, they went very far in offering trainees to other army divers. And in that time, the Swiss Army divers, they were also miners. It was only diving. They had the diamond on the back. And they trained people to go after the first enemy line with the helicopter, go into the river, and you need to blow off the bridges to cut the supply for the first enemy line. Now, the rivers in Europe and Switzerland with the current, it's not easy to dive upwards, and it's not everywhere 20 meters that the enemy could not see. So they trained, and they were very experienced.
Very interesting.
So, yeah, and firmly also we had a mayor. We brought him to New York at the time when we launched Limited, and the stories and the feedback of the press was amazing. So,
that's
so it's a true origin, a true honor for us, and then also with this watch now to stay in this line and to go back in time. And the stainless steel version originally was black oxidated. That's why we have chosen the ceramic first, to show at least a true symbolic value to the original piece. But all the original pieces we found, we just have one who's likely still black, but the other became white fast.
Yeah.
So, but now the stainless steel, this variation with the bronze, shows tribute also what I mentioned before, past, present, and future. The bronze did not exist, but here we just add a new material.
It goes really well with the green. I love it with the green.
Yeah, and so
Like
the hunt,
with
the
the
green,
green and such, yeah.
and it fits the theme. So we have it in full stainless steel. It's over there in a special packaging.
Yeah, tell us about the packaging. So the pattern of the packaging and such.
So the pattern of the packaging is purely just the original Swiss Army camouflage. And here you have the other watch in full stainless steel. Yeah, you can show it at here with then a NATO strap also offered within the retail price, also with the Swiss camouflage.
Very nice.
So very happy. So that's the latest novelties, which is just arriving now in Kuwait. So it's a question of days.
Yeah.
And so ready to be sold.
Actually, I wanted to end this episode with a question that you almost answered. So leave the current collection aside, digging the history of Doxa, and especially in Kuwait, and the pictures you see of Doxa watches, they have a big vintage dress watches. So you just said you're not gonna. Do you think we'll see Doxa getting into classical watches again, dress watches?
No.
Also,
there's a saying like a James Bond film: never say no, or I don't know, never.
never say never. Yeah.
Yeah, never say never. No, but not in the years to come, because we really focus on. We have a mission, and we are just at the beginning of our mission. So there's still a lot to come next year. Please believe me, with an outstanding next story where Doxa got linked, where people, even though they spy in, where could Doxa have been? You had Jean-Jacques Cousteau, you had the Swiss Army, you had this, what else could Doxa bring up? Please believe me, there's so much food still in the kitchen, and we can create a lot of menus still in the years to come.
That's very good to hear, and we're honestly, we're very happy that at least we get to experience Doxa now here in Kuwait with Behbehani. So at the end, thank you very much for your time. It's our pleasure to invite you and have you here in the lounge. As we discussed, this is the first interview, let's say, with the brand in TK Lounge, and I hope you enjoyed it.
So listen, thank you for the invite, and your lounge is just lovely. I really love it. It's really, you feel your enthusiasm, and our industry, who is beloved, has no borders. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much.